Order, please. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Public Accounts Committee. The Public Accounts Committee is established for the purpose of reviewing the public accounts, the annual report or other report of the Auditor General, and any other financial matters respecting the public funds of the province. My name is Marco McLeod. I'm the Vice Chair, and I'm from Pictou West. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone to have your phones on silent. And if there is a need to leave the building, we'll exit onto Granville Street, and the muster point is Grand Parade. I'll ask the members to introduce themselves, starting with the member to my left.
Diane Timmins, MLA for Victoria Lakes, she, her.
Hi, good morning. Rick Burns, MLA for Hammonds Pines, Lucasville, he, him.
Good morning, Tom Taggart, MLA for Colchester North.
Morning, Tim Outfit from Bedford Basin, he, him, Tim.
Good morning, Derek Mumbercut, City Member 2, he, him.
Paul Wozni, Sackville Cobequid, I use he, him pronouns.
Lisa LaChance, Halifax, Citadel, Sable Island, they, them.
We also have some officials with us. To my left, Gordon Hebb, Ledge Council. And to my right, Kim Langell, Committee Clerk. Now, we do have a committee statement here. So the chair and the vice chair have drafted the following statement on behalf of the committee relative to the cybersecurity meeting. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts met in camera on Wednesday, January 14th, 2026, with officials from the Department of Cybersecurity and Digital Solutions, the Department of Health and Wellness, and Nova Scotia Health with respect to the 2024 report of the Auditor General relating to cybersecurity readiness in healthcare. 13 of the 20 Auditor General recommendations have been completed, and the remaining 7 are actively underway. We expect the department's continued progress on the implementation of the recommendations. The Auditor General will be releasing a follow-up report on the recommendations at a future date. Is there any discussions on this statement? On today's agenda, we have officials with us from the Department of Health and Wellness and Nova Scotia Health regarding the West Bedford Transitional Health Facility. Before I ask the witnesses to introduce themselves, we'll save about 15 minutes at the end of this meeting to take care of some committee business. All right, let's ask the witnesses to introduce themselves, starting to my left here.
Good morning. Geoff Gatien, Associate Deputy Minister with the Department of Health and Wellness.
Dana MacKenzie, Deputy of Health and Wellness.
Aaron Smith, Medical Executive Director for Central Zone and Hospitals Physician.
Karen Oldfield, Interim CEO, Nova Scotia Health.
Derek Spinney, VP of Corporate Services and Chief Financial Officer, he, him.
Thank you. I invite Deputy MacKenzie and then Ms. Oldfield to make opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the committee. And thank you for inviting the department to discuss the West Bedford Transitional Health Facility. As most of you are probably aware, the facility opened in late 2024 and will be expanding in 2026, more than doubling in size. West Bedford Transitional Health is Nova Scotia's first standalone transitional health facility developed through a partnership between Nova Scotia Health and Shannex. One of our goals has been improving patient care for patients without acute care needs who occupy an acute care bed as they wait to transition home or to long-term care. The facility addresses this. It supports adults who no longer require acute care but are not yet ready to return home or transition to community-based services. Transitional health combines medical, rehabilitation, and practical and emotional support in a community setting. Patients work with their care team, including occupational therapists, physiotherapists, and other health professionals to prepare for their return home. We also know that people heal better at home, where they are in a comfortable place with familiar routines. Having access to community support can enhance a patient's physical and emotional recovery. The result is it helps free up acute care beds and contributes to reducing emergency department wait times. For example, the facility has saved Nova Scotia Health more than 18,000 bed days so far in provincial hospitals, and that number will grow after the second building opens. West Bedford has helped reduce hospital stays, prevent placements and prevent placements in long-term care, and it boosts the number of patients going home with proper support. It has even diverted some people from going to long-term care and instead staying home. We have a quote, as we'll talk about today. There's been some surveys of those who've been there, and this is, I think, a compelling statement from a patient at West Bedford. My grandfather has had outstanding care since he was transferred to West Bedford Transitional Health. He has improved in so many ways, mentally, emotionally, and physically since arriving. And Mr. Chair and the committee, I just want to make note as we begin our discussion today that from a procedural perspective, the Auditor General report that is the subject of this hearing, there are no witnesses with us here from Public Works or Build Nova Scotia who have the majority of assignments from that particular report. Notwithstanding that, we will try to be as transparent and accountable and as we can. But I just wanted to note that for the record, that we're here to talk about the report to the best of our ability. The other thing I think that we have to bear in mind is that the West Bedford project has been the subject of a lot of committee appearances over the past 2 years, I think. I really can't count them because it comes up. So we're going to take our time to make sure that we're responsive, but also trying to be as consistent as we can. So we may, in some cases, want to take things away and answer in writing in some contexts. Okay? I just wanted to preview that a bit in my opening remarks. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy MacKenzie. Ms. Oldfield?
Thank you, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can all agree that hospitals are not the most peaceful of environments. They're loud, they're bright, they can be disruptive. And West Bedford Transition Health was built in a completely opposite fashion, trying as much as possible to be like a home where a patient could take a bath, could go through a daily routine, spend time with other patients in social settings, which are numerous in the facility. And as the deputy has just said, it is a fact that some of the patients there may end up having to go to a long-term care, but basically we're trying to do the exact opposite. Trying to bring people into a facility who, with the right supports, have the best possible chance of returning home. And we've had some very good success in the 1 year that we've been in operation, and looking forward to the spring opening of another 110 beds. There are three parts of West Bedford that I hope we have an opportunity to speak to today. One is the clinical, the model of care, and Dr. Smith is well able to speak to that. The second is the information which we were asked to provide in advance, and Mr. Spinney is well versed, as the committee knows, with the ins and outs of that. And the other piece is what West Bedford brings to the system, and I cannot underestimate the what's the right word even? I can't underestimate how important it is for a hospital system to be able to bring people into an emergency department, have them admitted if they need to be admitted because there's a bed, or have their surgery because there's a bed. This facility enables us to move people through, in, through, and out. And that has been, I think, from my own perspective, one of the biggest changes over the course of the last 2 or 3 years that the system has actually experienced. So the medical gurus would call that access and flow. Coming in, moving through, and getting out. And so in order to actually move our system forward, this has become a very, very important element. So I look forward to speaking to it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oldfield. We'll now start the first round of questions with MLA Lachance.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being here. And I think we all want the best healthcare for Nova Scotians. I think this is, one of the key functions of government. We want people to get healthier when they have to interact with the healthcare system. And we are looking forward to hearing not just anecdotes and surveys, but we'd love to hear about the data around the model of care and that sort of thing. I appreciate Deputy Minister MacKenzie's note that we don't have folks from Public Works with us today. But, as we are in a period where we see much less government flexibility around spending, so we know choices are going to have to be made, we do need to occupy ourselves with the questions of how we spend the money, not just what we spend the money on. And, I think this development, this project, stands out. The Auditor General has called it a highly unusual transaction. So, there was a purchase without, any sort of due diligence around value for money. There was no public tender at various points along the way. There were no cost estimates that were actually developed for the $15 million conversion. The unsolicited bid from Shanix was very unusual. So there are questions about the value for money. And so, including the original purchase of Hogan Court property, how much has been spent to date on the West Bedford Transitional Health Facility?
Deputy MacKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And on that question in particular, I'll refer to my colleague, Mr. Spinney from NSH.
Mr. Spinney.
Thank you for the question. As at April 1st, so we're a few weeks away from that, but the easier way to answer the question will be, what will the total be? I don't have the exact as of today, but the total is going to be $114 million.
MLA Lachance.
And I'm wondering, so does that match the original project projections? And, I note that 114 was the sale price to Shanix. So the objective was to break even. Did, in fact, the province break even on this development?
Mr. Spinney.
Yes is the short answer. And so when we were provided a proposal from Shanix to expand from the original 68 beds to 178, there was a high-level estimate at the time of approximately $120 million to complete the construction. That number has now been finalized at $114 million, and all of the province's costs on that project were recovered.
MLA Lachance.
And what is the total value of the contract with Shanix? And are you able to share that publicly now that it is in force?
Mr. Spinney.
So the way that we calculate when we do the value of a contract is we take the total potential value, so the longest amount that the contract itself allows. So this contract is for a 25-year time period with an option for another 10 years. And then, of course, at the end of that, the parties could decide whatever they wanted to decide at that time. Throughout the contract, there are requirements for Shanix to deliver certain things, and so the contract can be terminated through that. And the province still has the right to terminate without any cause. There's a termination fee for that, but that flexibility is in there. So although there is a contract for 25 years, the province has requirements that need to be met in order for that to continue, and there's also an opportunity for a government to decide that they don't wish to continue through a break fee. And so when you take into account the costs of the construction and the cost of the service, it's approximately $685 per bed, if you will, per day, or per patient per day. And that would work out to be about $44.5 million a year.
MLA Lachance.
And so, I mean, I can do the math on a 25-year contract and that sort of stuff, but I will ask what the total value of that contract is. And before I pass it back to you, the unsolicited offer for Hogan Court was one of the things that the Auditor General highlighted as unusual. And Nova Scotians, we never saw what the evaluation was by government about that bid, about that offer to take it off government's hands. And in 2024, we were told it couldn't be shared because negotiations were ongoing. But can that be shared now?
Mr. Spinney.
So the total value, if you were to take 44.5 times it by 35 years and assume some amount for CPI, you would end up with approximately $2.7 billion, depending on what you want to use as a discount factor in there. And the $685 per day, just to put some context on that, would compare to our direct costs within a hospital, not even accounting for any land or construction costs, would be $975. So it's approximately $300 less costly, if you will. And so if you were to do the same math, 300 times 35 years per bed, it's about $1.2 billion
Order.
less than...
Excuse me, Mr. Spinney. Ms. Lachance has a question. Ms. Lachance.
I am sorry. We have such limited time. So I think the question that I'll just leave you with is, can you share, can Nova Scotians see the evaluation that was done to accept the Shanix offer, and if that can be provided to this committee? And so you talked about, the fact that the original contract was looking at potentially $120 million, and there were some early works. So Shanix had wanted between $6 and $10 million for early works at the Hogan Court site, and then they later received a backdated sole source contract worth $20 million for early work. And so how did that come about? So why was that sole source contract increased and backdated, and how did you analyze that, in fact, $20 million was the right number and not $10 million as originally intended?
Mr. Spinney.
Thank you. I'm not sure the particulars of backdating, but what I can do maybe is spell out how it operated. And so when the government decided to take this additional project on to open phase 2, we would have started that part of the project April 1st, 2024 with Shanix, and we instituted what we called an early works program and an early works contract. And what that allows the construction entity to do is to begin work without the end date and the exact final amounts confirmed. So it allows you to, like the name suggests, early works. You get to start that early. And then throughout that period, the way that we were able to know what was being done and how much had been spent is reports were submitted from Shanix, and our public works organization would do on-site inspections as well. So there were on-site inspections monitoring the progress and invoicing that was taking place. So there were milestone payments that were happening once it was confirmed that certain things were delivered.
Thank you, Mr. Spinney. MLA Wozni.
Thank you, Chair. This question may go to the deputy or perhaps to the CEO of Nova Scotia Health. I'll leave it to them to decide who best to answer. In December of 2022, when the hospital redevelopment plan was expanded under the headline of More Faster, the Premier said, "Whatever it costs, it will cost." This was clearly the case with Hogan Court. But elsewhere, there's little progress. For example, the government promised an expanded emergency department at the Cobequid Health Centre with 24/7 access, but there's no sign that planning has started, much less work to deliver on that commitment. How did unplanned spending on projects like Hogan Court hurt the province's ability to pay for other healthcare improvements?
Deputy MacKenzie.
Thank you for the question. And I'm going to take a moment, if that's okay, Mr. Chair, to just caucus about the order of go here to be responsive to the member's question.
Okay. Deputy MacKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think the question is, how has the project hurt the province's ability to fund other projects? Is that kind of the gist of it? So Mr. Spinney is going to actually take up the majority of this answer, but I'll speak to, some of the processes in terms of what's happening. And I think in terms of what happened in 2022, that my friend is talking about, I'm sorry, I'm used to other environments. In December of 22, the decisions that were made at the time, it's really just about timing, I think, in terms of the central zone planning. That's now what's happening more generally. But I'll hand the microphone to my colleague, Mr. Spinney, to provide more detail about this particular project.
Thank you. Mr. Spinney.
Thank you. It's a great question, and obviously at the forefront of what we do every day too, trying to determine what services need to be delivered where. And so, as was noted in December 2022, more faster infrastructure plan was introduced, I'll say, and it was clear that there were certain things that were priorities that we set out to do, including the record time delivery of the Hogan Court West Bedford Transitional Health Facility. As part of that, government looked out to not just that facility, but the province, if you will. And so work has been underway at Cobequid to determine how best to leverage that facility for everything that it can be for the community, including can it be expanded emergency department. And one of the things that has come up with that is other considerations, such as if you were to do that, what number, if any number of beds would you need at that facility, and can that property and facility handle that? So there's certain classifications that the building needs to be able to exit safely and so on. And so what has now happened is the government has undertaken what we call a master planning process, that we're looking at not only Cobequid, but also looking at the VG, for instance, to determine what is the best way to meet these needs, and that work is now underway.
Thank you, Mr. Spinney. MLA Wozni.
That's an answer I've now heard 4 times, coming from the minister and other folks. What remains unclear is how the unplanned spending at Hogan Court impacted the province's ability to follow through on other commitments made at the same time that Hogan Court was announced. We keep hearing about all of this work happening, and while this government has been extremely vocal, to the point of almost waving pom-poms to celebrate everything that is happening and will happen with Hogan Court, the silence on the Cobequid Health Centre and that commitment has been deafening for the community people that rely on that facility for immediate access to health care. Definitively, when will Nova Scotians receive an update on the plans to expand the Cobequid Centre?
Deputy MacKenzie.
Thank you. We're just going to caucus for a minute to make sure that we answer between the two entities appropriately.
ADM Gatien.
Yes, thank you. Like right now, I don't think we're able to give a definitive answer on an update. As Mr. Spinney mentioned, there is a master planning process in place where we do need to see the results to see what elements of change or need are identified, not only at that site, but in Central Zone. So we don't have a definitive answer to your question.
MLA Wozni.
Thank you. I think we all understand the concept of transitional care as kind of a net new addition to the healthcare system in Nova Scotia. And the concept, the larger project, is to ensure that Nova Scotians who no longer need acute care aren't stuck in a hospital bed that could be used by somebody who does. Freeing up space so patients can move from emergency department beds to acute care beds, and making sure people in emergency get the care that they need more efficiently. However, this doesn't seem to be happening in our province despite the opening of the West Bedford Transitional Care Centre. Since this government took office, average emergency room wait times in Nova Scotia have gone up by almost 50%. When can Nova Scotians expect to see emergency room wait times decrease?
I recognize Dr. Smith.
Thanks so much for the question. I think I'll start the response by saying that transitional care model isn't so much about getting folks out of the hospital as it is supporting them on the journey forward through their health, from acute care, acute issues, back to community. And we certainly are seeing results. So since the opening of West Bedford already, we've seen acute care bed savings of over 18,000. We've supported 220 people out of West Bedford into community, which would equal over 20,000 folks who have post-discharge support within the community. Our current bed occupancy is greater than 100% at all times. That's our normal. The West Bedford facility has allowed us to manage those beds more appropriately. Beds are our most valuable resource, with people, of course. And if we don't have the beds to treat folks and support folks, as you've mentioned, we can't do what we need to do. West Bedford allows us, as you've pointed out, to open those beds much more quickly, which has a knock-down effect in terms of folks having access to emergency medicine much quicker. Also allows folks to continue their journey from the emergency department to the acute care that they need. And I will say, too, it also impacts our ability to provide care to people who aren't admitted to hospital but do need what we call ambulatory care. So folks who need same-day care, same-day appointments, because it frees up our clinical staff to address those issues. So I would say that we've had quite amazing results from the opening of this facility in terms of bed flow and in terms of acute care bed days saved for those who need it most. And I anticipate that as the facility grows, that effect will be compounded and will have a real effect on Nova Scotians' interaction with their health system.
MLA Wozni.
Thank you for that. You've spoken to the initial impact of the West Bedford Transitional Care Facility on acute care. But I highlight again that part of the promise of this facility was alleviating the pressure on emergency rooms. And our concern is that at this point, with 2 years of West Bedford in operation, that we don't see much of, if any, impact on ER wait times and access to emergency care. And this was one of the promised deliverables of West Bedford, and it doesn't seem to be materializing at this point. I think it's an important question for Nova Scotians. I'd like to ask Ms. Oldfield, when you last spoke here about the Auditor General's value for money report in Hogan Court, you said, at times overall hospital occupancy in the Western Zone has approached 140%. That comment was made 2 years ago, yet those numbers have barely changed. Just last week, the Annapolis Community Health Center was at 140% occupancy. we all understand the potential for West Bedford to have a positive impact on the broader health system, but 2 years in, the promise of that facility is not yet realized, and the persistent issues that impact our healthcare system remain. My question is, when will Nova Scotians see a change to these overcrowding issues in the Western Zone and no longer be stuck receiving care in hallways?
I recognize Ms. Oldfield with just under a minute left.
Thank you. That is the case, that the Western Zone has consistently been at a very high occupancy rate. Notwithstanding, Valley Regional as 1 and Yarmouth as 2 have had excellent performance in their emergency departments in relative terms, and these statistics are available. So they're offloads, and Aaron can correct me, but if I think of Yarmouth, you know, they've done amazing work in Yarmouth with their offloads in very tight conditions. Yarmouth is undergoing an expansion to their emergency department. The Valley Regional has consistently had the top emerge performance in the province between Valley and Aberdeen in terms of offloading and having people through the emerge. And that's despite the 141% occupancy. Today, as Aaron said, the province is running at 108. A perfect system, which is just a dream for most provinces, I would say all provinces in this country, is running at approximately 85%. That is not a reachable goal at any point in the near future.
Thank you, Ms. Oldfield. I recognize MLA Mombercat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank everyone for being here today. So I'll start off with, the committee highlighted in September that alternative procurement methods can increase risks associated with achieving value for money, vendor reliance, and transparency. And the use of alternative procurement practices was a main theme in the report, as we talked about. So my first question is, has the department done an analysis of the economic impact using untendered or alternative procurement for projects like this one?
I recognize Deputy MacKenzie.
Thank you. So thank you for the question. And I think what you're trying to get at is, has there been an analysis of those times when we wouldn't have used procurement versus alternative? So I would have to undertake to kind of go back and look at that, because procurement is a joint responsibility, if you will. Provinces, departments procure contracts, but Service Nova Scotia would be the procurement department who would do that type of analysis for us and with us. But to answer your question, a comprehensive kind of detailed comparison aggregated across all contracts is not something that the department has done.
MLA Mombercat.
Thank you, and it kind of leads into my second question, and you may have just answered it, but can the department quantify whether alternative procurement resulted in lower per-bed costs compared to the traditional competitive tender process?
I recognize Deputy MacKenzie.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you mean with respect to this particular project, or inside the...
MLA Mombercat.
This project and in general, it was a big theme of the report last time when it comes to using alternative procurement. So my question for you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. MacKenzie, has that work been done? Have you looked at quantifying, or have you looked at this resulting in lower per bed cost if then going through a traditional tender process? That's the question.
Deputy MacKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Spinney is going to take this one for us.
I recognize Mr. Spinney.
Thank you. It's a great question, and one that we take very seriously. When you look at the Procurement Act, it demands, I would say, best value. And so the way that you achieve that is different in different circumstances. One of the tools for that is proposals, if you will. And one of the tools for that is to do select competitive offers and different procurement methods. So in this particular case, when we started this project, we asked over 10 different organizations across the country, would they be interested in running a facility like this? That got narrowed to 7, that 7 got narrowed down to 2, and 1 was selected. It was Shanix. When we then looked at this project to figure out what can we do beyond this, because we were looking to get closer to 200 beds for transitional health, Shanix provided an unsolicited proposal, which was quite timely because we were looking at costs on what would it cost to do this a different way. And those costs and comparisons were provided to government, and they made a decision that this was the most economical. To give us some easier terms to understand, I guess, the cost for this facility, the $114 million, the amount that we will pay for that on a per diem basis is less than $150 a day. And so $150 a day, you'd be hard-pressed to find a hotel room in Halifax for $150 a day. If you were to take that number and divide it by the square footage of this facility, it would be less than $50 per square foot. We pay more than $50 per square foot for our primary care leases that we're doing today. So this is a lower cost per square foot, if we like to do the math that way, and this is a much lower cost at $150, less than $150 a day. This rate is also guaranteed for 35 years. This rate will never go up. So again, at $150 a day, and it's actually less than that, when we're paying that amount 25 years from now, the present value of that would be less than $60 a day. So the comparisons have been done, and we're quite pleased and proud of the work that we've done in my particular role, for sure, to make sure that Nova Scotians are getting value and best value out of this facility financially, but most importantly as well is the 18,000 patient days that folks didn't have to stay in a hospital. They were getting the right care at the right cost in the right place.
Thank you, Mr. Spinney. MLA Mombercat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the answer. And I guess I look to the future here too, and if the government plans to build additional transitional healthcare facilities, which I'm sure is something that is on the books, what safeguards are now in place to ensure that future projects follow the proper procurement protocols?
I recognize Ms. Oldfield.
Thank you. Just like to paint a small picture. The province builds a lot of infrastructure, and one of the things that we need to do in Nova Scotia is look for ways that we can multi-use a facility so that it doesn't serve just one purpose, it serves multiple purposes. That's just smart. I really hope, and this table really hopes and has been advocating, that as we go forward and we look at the long-term care home builds in the province of Nova Scotia, that a percentage, a component of those long-term care beds would actually be allocated to transitional care. So same facility, it could be a slightly different staffing model in the transitional part of the facility versus the long-term care facility, but it doesn't really make sense to keep building when individuals and patients could be housed close to home in a facility where they're getting the right care in the right place. So I think that as we go down the road, that is something that the province must look at. And I'm hoping strongly that that's already being looked at. In terms of your specific question, I think when you go back to the Auditor General's report and to the 5 recommendations that were made, they've basically been adopted by the Department of Public Works and by Nova Scotia Health as well. So I think your points are very well taken.
I recognize MLA Mombercat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the answer. And you mentioned, Ms. Oldfield, in your response, looking to the future, and really, it's a broader government question, but it does really impact health the most. we're in the worst financial position I think this province has been ever. We're in a situation now where you have the largest deficit we've ever seen. You're north of $1.2 billion, $1.3 billion. We don't know what that final number will land at when budget time comes. You've seen the government reduce its own revenue streams, which also have put it in a position where to come out of that deficit is going to be very difficult. You're seeing a stabilization in the population, which is going to also play a huge impact in trying to deal with it. I would argue we potentially are in a structural deficit. Like, that's where this is going. And my question is, and that's not for you to answer, but my question becomes is that, you know, I serve on the government side. We made lots of investments in healthcare infrastructure, which will last during the estimates process. But are you concerned that the ability to build more places like this is going to be problematic? Because you did mention, too, you're hoping the government is talking about this stuff, but this is a very real conversation for us. We want the best for Nova Scotians, but we're also in a position which we're seeing, in which I've been around long enough to see that the government's really going to be in it tough. They're going to be in it tough, and I don't think the government representatives realize how tough it is. I lived those years of trying to bring things back to order, and you're going to have to live with that too. So my question through you, Ms. Oldfield, if you want to take it, are you concerned with the financial health of this province and how it's going to impact your ability to provide more facilities like this to support families?
I recognize Ms. Oldfield.
Thank you. As a Nova Scotian, as a taxpayer, and as a person who's working every day in this system, I'm concerned every day about this and many, many other things. So let me share a little bit of what the future looks like, because I think this is very important, and this will be news to people, but I want to share some of what we see when we look around the corner. And the opportunity is real, because even this week on Thursday and Friday, we have 20 healthcare leaders from across the country coming to Nova Scotia to see what we've done and to learn how we've done it. We have ample opportunities to share best practices, and that's not just in Canada, it's beyond Canada. What I'm talking about specifically is the extreme importance of digital health. So if we look at one of the top healthcare providers in the universe, it is Kaiser Permanente. And Kaiser Permanente has made a strategic decision that 80% of care, which today is undertaken in an acute care setting, will happen outside of that acute care setting. And they will do it probably by 2035. That's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it is a direction in which most of the provinces in this country have to go, for the reasons that you have articulated. The bricks and mortar are going to turn to digital provision. Let me give you a specific example coming back to Hogan. At Hogan, the operator has a wearable, and the wearable is worn by each patient and also by the care providers in the facility. And that wearable, if memory serves, spins off 69,000 data points every day. So not only can the care plan be designed specifically on a day-to-day basis, it could actually be tweaked from morning to afternoon if a person is showing, doing well or not doing well. The wearable is something that the person, we're not doing it today, but we have the technical ability to have that person wear it home so that the care continues, monitoring the 69,000 data points, and through the power of technology, the person can continue to be monitored and the care plan can continue to be adjusted. Now, that might sound like the Jetsons, but it's here and it's now, and that is the direction in which not just Nova Scotia, but many of the provinces in this country have to go, because there's just no way. If you look at Trillium as an example, they're spending $17 billion to build a new hospital in Mississauga. The Canadian, our system just can't do it. We can't do it fast enough, and we don't have the money when we have every other issue that's going on in the world and in our province to keep spending uncontrollably on healthcare.
Thank you, Ms. Oldfield. I recognize MLA Mombercat.
Thank you. How much time do I have left, Mr. Chair?
Just under 8 minutes.
8 minutes, okay. But it's an important question because we're seeing it is an important conversation, one that I appreciate. You know what I mean? There's projects in Cape Breton that haven't broken ground yet that were announced years ago around Glace Bay and New Waterford, and there's some concern on the ground now whether they're going to happen or not. And I appreciate the response in regards to, of course, healthcare is evolving. You're seeing new technologies and all that stuff. But the real concern for me, even with expanding Hogan Quarter, looking at future projects down the road, is that this government's ability to do it, and again, it's not an answer for this committee, but it's important to note that, like, we are in a desperate financial position, in my opinion, in this province, that has been created over the last 5 years. We went from balanced budgets to the largest deficit in history. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll get back to the report. Ideally, we want patients, of course, to have the best experience in West Bedford. Do you have any data on the success rate for patients leaving the facility to go home or other healthcare facilities?
I recognize Dr. Smith.
Thanks, Emily Mumbercat. So since December 2024, we've admitted 417 folks to the facility, and we've discharged 250. I think the important note here, which shows the potential of this model, is we've also avoided 10 long-term care placements directly from hospital. 10 may seem like a small number, but the impact on the system can't be overstated. These are folks who oftentimes are awaiting long periods of time in hospital beds where care could more appropriately provided for the whole person in other facilities like West Bedford. To note, folks that are experiencing subacute or less acute illnesses in hospital, it's not just about getting them out quicker to another facility. It's the recognition that if we don't treat the whole person in the context of them, their families, their communities, folks are at higher risk for not returning meaningfully to the community. They're at higher risk of requiring more resources in community, and they're at higher risk of landing in more cost-intensive environments, such as long-term care. So we also know that the average length of stay is quite low. We have a very high occupancy rate. And then beyond that, the bricks and mortar of the West Bedford facility, we're also supporting people very intensively at home because we understand the journey doesn't stop at the door as they leave West Bedford into community. They need ongoing care and ongoing supports. And in fact, that's the way to focus on that space, is the way to get them home quicker. So we've had 220 people receive community outreach supports, which equates to 20,629 days, of post-discharge support. They can receive that support for up to 10 weeks. Just circling back to where we started in this conversation in terms of the cost containment piece, the best way to mitigate costs in the health system is to keep people healthy. And keeping people healthy and supporting people in the experience of their health happens in community and happens in facilities like West Bedford. So I think transitional care is a critical space in terms of keeping Nova Scotians healthy and containing costs.
Ms. Oldfield, you'd like to add something?
Please, if I may, thank you. We've not talked about this, but I do think it's important to note that given the propensity of the operator and the culture of that organization, we also have a massive opportunity to learn. So we have already learned a great deal over the past 12 months, but with the data comes the ability to continue to tweak, change, learn, whatever the nature of that learning might be. They also do comprehensive surveys of their patients, those who are willing to participate. And I'm just going to share a couple of the stats there. So this is a operator asked and shared with NSH, and just some top line info. Privacy, respected and protected, 100%. Team discussed goals for transition to home, so the care plan home, 96.67. Overall experience with the team, awareness and support for discharge goals, staff compassion, honesty, professionalism, and the list goes on. So we can also learn from any feedback which is provided by patients. And so because that's shared with us, we're able to do whatever tweaks are required as well. So the other key piece of this is that there are world-renowned physicians, and I'll say Dr. Ken Rockwood for one, who's known globally for his work with geriatric patients, and persons like Dr. Rockwood, but others who we have available in Nova Scotia and at Nova Scotia Health, have been tapped by the operator for their expertise. So it's, I wouldn't say that Hogan is a living lab. I wouldn't say that. But I would say that there's a lot of information that we can learn to inform other parts of our healthcare system, and I think that's an important point to note.
I recognize MLA Mumbercat with 1 minute remaining.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not going to get into a question answer at this point. I'll have a few more minutes, but I'll stop. I'll end with this. I appreciate the information. You know what I mean. We want people to have success in the healthcare system. We want people to transition. There's we can talk about alternative procurement. My fear is, and it's more broader even than this, is that the success of the healthcare system is going to be based on the ability for government to pay for it. And I'm looking at numbers now and seeing trends and seeing population growth and all of that, and it's going to be concern for the Department of Health as the government overall tries to budget in one of the largest deficits, the largest deficit situation in an environment that's been very difficult over the last number of years. So I'll pass it over to the government.
Thank you, MLA Mumbercat. I recognize MLA Timmins.
I'm just wondering if Ms. Alford would like to finish her comments regarding the question that...
I recognize Ms. Oldfield.
Thank you. I'm not minimizing and would not. Okay, well, this is something that we live with every day. But so important. We're going through a major transition. I think the Prime Minister referred to it as a rupture yesterday. And in healthcare, not just in Nova Scotia, but across the country, the change is the data. It is the data. And we have the ability in Nova Scotia, because we've built it over the course of the past 3 years, to access the data. The data allows for two things. It allows for much better management, because you're not flying blind. So you know what to do, where to do it. And the second thing about the data is that, outside of the acute care system, we also know where in the province that we need to target, whether it's need a family practice or whatever part of the healthcare system. So I think that is the single biggest issue that I would offer, because it's not going to be about the bricks and mortar. It is going to be about the data and having the ability to monitor, to use it, to manage our system. And I'll go on, but I'll wait till perhaps the other team has an opportunity to ask their question. So thank you.
I recognize MLA Timmins.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming here today and discussing this important care for our residents. And we talk about value for money, and value for money is also or value of care is just as important as value for money. The care that we provide and the long-term care is most important for our residents, and that's what our community wants to hear. That's what they're asking for. So I know, Dr. Smith, this is a question for you, and you did talk a little bit about the patient's journey, but I'm just wondering if you could put it in layman's term and talk about look at a condition and talk about the flow of care through acute to the Bedford care and then to home care. If you can, describe that for us and maybe get a true picture of what the service is providing.
I recognize Dr. Smith.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about the patient journey in this space, because it's quite remarkable. I'd start by maybe using first voice as a clinician in this space, as somebody who provides hospital-based care. It's important that we treat the patient in the context of the patient, in the context of the family. Once we successfully treat the acute issue for why they're in hospital, oftentimes there's other complex issues that would prevent them from going straight home. So, for example, there may be physical or mobility needs. There may be needs for medication optimization. There may be needs for wound care. So once these needs are identified by the interprofessional team in the hospital, which would include physicians and nurses and occupational therapists and such, these patients are identified and discussions are had with them and their families about there's another option for you than the traditional hospital bed where you may actually heal quicker. You may be able to get back to community quicker, and you may do it in a context where you and your family will be able to preserve more dignity and independence. So once the agreement is made between the care team and the patient and the family, that person is then assessed by a clinician who specializes in assessing appropriateness for going to the Shanix West Bedford facility. They make sure, too, that the patient's needs are very well understood. Right? So it's not so much a transition of care as it is a warm handoff. You're not starting from scratch with these patients when they arrive. You know their care goals, you know their needs, and you also know their goals of care in terms of getting home and what supports they may need. When they arrive at West Bedford, discharge planning happens at day one. Folks have eyes wide open on where people want to get and why they want to get there, and their support starts at day one when they arrive. So while they're in West Bedford, they're treated by a whole interprofessional care team, which includes physicians, nurse practitioners, and other interprofessional team members like we discussed. And the great thing about West Bedford is they also receive that in a very focused way. So we know folks at West Bedford receive between 4.5 and 5 hours of direct patient care and support every day. And again, I can't overestimate the impact that has on folks. Also, folks are supported in their social journey as well, from acute care back to community. So the environment encourages interactions, it encourages independence, it encourages socialization while folks are there. Once folks are getting close to be able to go home with supports, as I mentioned previously, the care and the support doesn't end at the door going out. So we have the ability to provide community-based care for folks to support not just them, but their families. And we also have the ability, if things go home in an unforeseen way, they develop care needs, then we understand their needs. We understand the person, and we can address them most appropriately, whether that be ongoing or intensified community supports, or whether folks may need an expedited assessment by other acute care professionals. So as I stated, I think my first opportunity to talk, West Bedford is a very valuable way to help support patients and families moving forward in their care journey and back to communities and back to where they feel supported and safe and are surrounded by people who care about them very deeply.
I recognize MLA Timmons.
And you mentioned that a few hundred patients have taken the journey. Could you please speak on the overall impact and access of the flow of the system that has provided?
I recognize Dr. Smith.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So as I said previously, we've had 417 folks admitted to the facility, and we've had a wonderful amount of people that have also been able to exit the facility and go back to their community settings. If we think from a systems perspective, again, I can't overstate the impact this has in terms of allowing Nova Scotians in general to have better access to the system. So access and flow is the term we used to measure and optimize the journey of patients from the front door of the acute care system back to home. By having facilities like West Bedford Transitional Care and moving folks to the more appropriate care setting it provides, it also means that we're able to do things like get folks off ambulances quicker, or we're able to get them in front of an emergency physician quicker, and we're able to get them to a bed in the acute care, which is more conducive to treating them. Right? It's much better to treat people in the context of the whole person when they're in an acute care facility, acute care room where they're able to be treated by the entire interprofessional team. So I guess in summary, it's having an astounding effect on our ability to provide that acute-based care. And I suspect as this facility expands and as we learn from it, optimize it, as CEO Oldfield has said, that impact is going to be felt right across the province as Nova Scotians interact with our healthcare system.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I recognize MLA Timmins.
Thank you. You did touch on the emergency room setting as well because of the ambulances coming in, and that's freeing beds and doctors within the emergency as well, because it's moving the flow for sure. I'm going to move on to my colleagues because they have further questions to ask. Thanks.
I recognize MLA Taggart.
Thank you, Chair. So I just, Dr. Smith just used the words, I think, an outstanding impact. Is that correct? So this facility has had an outstanding impact on the future health care in Nova Scotia and the way it is today. But this is the third or fourth time that this audited report has come to this committee, and it's about value for money. So I want to go back to Mr. Spinney was interrupted there with his respect to the question on the question was asked about the overall the 25 years out in the contract and what the fiscal outlook was there. You know what I mean? And so. I think there was, and I'm not good to remember numbers, but there was somewhere around $114 million to cost to build this building, however we did it. So could you finish your answer on the value for money piece of it, please?
I recognize Mr. Spinney.
Thank you. It's a great question. And to put it into the context of all the conversation that we've been hearing this morning, there most certainly is recognition that the current state is not sustainable, whether it be in Nova Scotia or across the country. And it is interesting that leaders from across the country are actually coming here this week to figure out what have you done. We're seeing this success, and how can we emulate that? Now, that's not to say that we've gotten everything right the first time out of the gate. We certainly haven't. But what I certainly appreciate working for Nova Scotia Health is we've been given the ability to try. And so we've been trying new things. We've broken the mold, I would say, on how we go about infrastructure in this province, because I also agree that the same way of doing it across the province is not sustainable and won't happen. It's just not in the cards. We need to figure out how to do it differently, and this model has shown us how to do it differently, and we're doing that. And so wherever you live in Nova Scotia, the way you get care will be different. But the good news is it can actually still be better, not less. But in order to do that, we need to be able to rely on facilities like this outside of this one. I do think that you'll see more of this. I do think that you'll see it combined with long-term care homes and become a hub for care in communities, so that we can also do what Ms. Oldfield said, which is to deliver care of the future digitally whenever it's most appropriate. So you'll see less of the big hospitals with the H on it and more of facilities like this, and more care actually being delivered in-home. So for us, as we were doing this, and decision points that we made to find out, is this more economical? Is this still getting good value? Because that was driving this the whole time. some of the data points that we used, for instance, is this is $300 less per day cost. If you were to take that cost and multiply it by the number of beds and then multiply it by 35 years, you would actually come up with a savings of over $1 billion. Now, I don't actually quote that often because it's over 35 years. However, I've also heard the costs quoted that way to say, well, the cost of the contract is $2.7 billion, which makes it sound like it's this really big, heavy thing. And certainly it is, but we need to put it into context is all I'm suggesting. It's over 35 years, and if we want to use that timeline, we also need to use what are the savings then to the system, and the savings is over $1 billion. And again, some of the points that I would leave with you is less than $150 a day is what the cost is. And again, you can relate that in your own lives to what that would actually compare to. So there certainly is value for money here. We certainly did introduce a new way of doing it. As the Auditor General report stated, when you do things differently, you introduce new risks. Absolutely we did. But we met those risks, we mitigated those risks, and we delivered a very good product, both financially and most importantly, for the patients that are actually going through there. And that's not to say that there's not more to do. There's always more to do. So we're not there's lots of other projects we can talk about. But as far as how we did this one and what was delivered, I think the proof is in a visit. So if you haven't been there, I would highly recommend you reach out. We would love to take you through and show you what's going on at that facility.
Thank you for the invitation. MLA Taggart.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to hand it off to my colleague here, Mr. MLA Otit.
I recognize MLA Outhet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What's my time?
Thank you.
You have just over 6 minutes left, Mr. Outhet.
I think I can try that. So thank you, folks. It's a regular appearance by some of you. Nice to see you again, and nice to meet you, Dr. Smith. It's funny how a few years ago, none of this would have been perhaps all that near and dear to me. Municipal councillor, healthy family, a lot younger myself. And now in my home, I've had 2 people battle cancer. I have a father in palliative care, and I have a daughter finishing med school. I have to say that I'm very proud. And so how things changed. So I mention that because how things have changed in my family can also mention how we need to, can also exemplify how we need to change things in our system. And I do agree that down the road things are going to change with more data and more delivery. And I've always said that about the universities too. They can't afford to have all these big infrastructure, as well. And we are in a challenge because while budgets were balanced, et cetera, in the past, and we were guilty of this sometimes at HRM as well, we did that by deferring maintenance or by deferring construction. So the roof leak got bigger if you do it at home, or the highway or the hospital conditions got worse if you do it as a provincial government. So of course we've had to look at new ways of doing things. I've been in the facility in West Bedford 4 times now. Twice, once when it was announced, once when it was opened, a couple times since then, including as recently as last Thursday when I actually took my stamp and went on the road to notarize something for a patient who was in that facility with ALS, which is a cruel and terrible disease. And this person could not say enough good about the facility and the person and the personal care that he's receiving. And I went in there, and it does feel a little bit more. And I do some of the nursing homes feel a bit more. I won't say like a hotel or a resort, but a heck of a lot less like things that we would have seen in the past, or traditional nursing homes, my mother many years ago worked in was called the Convalescence Hospital. Dreadful place. And so we've changed things. So what is being done at West Bedford to ensure that patients can interact with each other and have this sense of community? Because this is what I'm sensing when I'm in there. This is different than a home. It's different than a hospital.
I recognize Mr. Spinney with 3 minutes left.
Yeah, thank you. Great question, and it's a really important part of the care, as Dr. Smith mentioned earlier. The more people move, the better they feel. The more quickly they're able to get home, the more they socialize, the more love they feel, the quicker they heal and go home as well. And this facility is designed around those key things. I think I was quoted here before saying that I went through the rehab room there, and your traditional sense might be that, well, gee, are people actually using the equipment? Aren't these people that are ill? And the equipment was all being used, and AC/DC Thunderstruck was blaring through the speakers. And so that's where I really get excited about this facility and what the teams are doing there, because it is really, truly changing lives. Some of the other things that they've done there, and I just was there yesterday going through phase 2 as we're about to open that, is they create places of destination within the facility so that the patients have the dignity to be able to not just say, can you walk down the hall, but let's go someplace. So there's coffee kiosks, for instance. There's also different places to do rehab. There is also a simulation apartment on every floor of phase 2 where when you're getting ready to go home, you actually stay in that apartment your last few nights because the team and your family are there making sure that you can still make tea, that you can still do your laundry. There's your own washer and dryer in there, that the toilet is the same seat that what you'll expect at home because often it's different in the facility. So can you get down? Can you get up? These are some of the things that cause people to get out and about, if I can call it that way. There's actually a wellness garden at the front of the facility where patients can go with tranquil water. There's also a facility, I was teasing the team yesterday, calling it an obstacle course that maybe we should all go through, but there's a garden outside that is actually set up on purpose for people to navigate so that they can see how they respond on gravel. Now that sounds really simple maybe to many of us, but they take people outside to walk through the gravel, transitioning into grass and these sorts of things, again, putting them in real life situations. And it's also different dining rooms that people are actually able to go to as well, and different social spaces. So when you go there, you're actually going out and about, if I can say it that way, to different places within the facility. It's truly remarkable that way, actually.
Thank you, Mr. Spinney. Mr. MLA Outfit, 10 seconds.
Thank you.
All right, we'll begin our second round of questions. 11 minutes allotted. We'll start with MLA Lachance.
Great, thank you. I do want to return to the questions around value for money. I think it's really important to acknowledge that public spending is different. It's different than decisions that might be made by a private company, for instance, because we do want more. We always want more from government. We always need more from government. And Nova Scotians need more right now in terms of healthcare and affordability. And, I think, on one hand, we have a premier who said whatever it costs, it will cost. But at the same time, I think, there's been a recognition at this table that, we're far from a dream system. And I think from our perspective, we need to acknowledge that a dollar spent in one place by government is a dollar that's not spent somewhere else, and that we have all these needs. Public procurement, I think step one is, making sure that there is a public call for tenders. I think that's an important part of due diligence. And I think, at multiple points along this process, essentially multiple tenders, multiple visions, multiple bids were not sought. I guess I'm wondering, given the financial reality that we're in, running the province's largest deficit ever, in-year deficit, as well as, increasing our net debt, is there a commitment in healthcare spending to always seek multiple tenders and to ensure that Nova Scotians know that that there's rigor in how tenders are being sought and reviewed in healthcare?
I recognize Deputy MacKenzie.
Thank you for the question. And I can assure the committee that with respect to, is there a commitment to always undertake to obtain the best value for Nova Scotians? The answer is yes. And the procurement policies and the legislation that governs us are always top of mind and complied with. And as we've heard before at the committee, alternative procurement is a legally valid way for the province to actually execute its procurement function in certain contexts. And as you will recall, in the particular exchange we had about this, I believe, in 2024, there are, of course, specific exceptions under the Canada Free Trade Act for the health and social services exemption to allow sole source when you're dealing with a health or social service contract. And I'm pleased to report that the Auditor General's recommendation on that, which we accepted, has been complied with respect to ensuring that moving forward we have more detail and more policy paperwork around exercising that health and social services exception. So we're always trying to ensure that we're getting the best value for Nova Scotians, and I think some of the testimony here today has demonstrated the significant savings with respect to that. The other question, I think, is, are we always focused on value? Yes. And I think that one of the things we're also focused on is the reality of the situation and the emergency situations that we face in healthcare. My colleagues have talked about the acute pressure in the acute care system, where the system is at times over capacity, and the reality of having to invest in the timeliest way possible with the best value for Nova Scotians is always our lodestar at the Department of Health.
MLA Lachance, would you like Ms. Oldfield to add to that? I recognize Ms. Oldfield.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Just to add to it, following either the last or the previous to last committee at which we were speaking of West Bedford, I was asked, I believe by the media, about virtual care, and are we ever going to take virtual care to an RFP? And I did respond that we were, and we are actually at RFP at this moment in time. So we had a sole source, and that came at the very beginning of COVID to help solve a major emergency. And then once we could breathe, we took it out to the market, and that's where it is right now. And a second example is, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I do believe that shortly there will be a process for what I call standing offers for a variety of advisory services. So we are doing that as well, and I think that's prudent, and we're at an ability and time at which it makes sense to go there, and therefore we are.
Thank you, Ms. Oldfield. I recognize MLA Lachance.
And so we were talking, about the impact and the positive impact that West Bedford has had for many people. So there's the actual healthcare data, there's surveys being done. But I'm wondering, in terms of measuring some of the other metrics and really kind of what the implementation model is. So healthcare innovation is challenging. It's an area that I worked in before, and there are models around implementation, because it's hard work. So, I completely acknowledge that. But I'm wondering, you talked about 417 admitted and 22 back to community. I guess I'm wondering what the percentage of patients are that go back to hospital. So, what the hospital readmission rate is. And have you been tracking? I assume that there's sort of a checklist that people access to put people over to West Bedford. Have you been identifying cases where, in fact, it wasn't the right decision to transfer that person from hospital to West Bedford, and what's being done about that?
I recognize Dr. Smith with about 4 minutes remaining.
Wonderful, and thank you for the question. I guess to answer the two parts of your question, one around readmission rates, I'm happy to say we actually have a pathway from West Bedford back into acute care beds. So folks get there and their care needs change. We have the ability to take them back directly into an acute care bed as opposed to a traditional pathway, which would be into the emergency department and then back up. So that's one of the great successes we've learned in this process. The other, it was around readmission rates, and I believe from community, post-discharge is what I had heard. Just want to clarify.
I recognize MLA Lachance.
So my question was readmission rates from West Bedford back to hospital and what that rate is. And then also wanting to understand, I'm assuming that some cases have been identified where that it was the wrong decision to transfer someone to West Bedford, and what's been done with that information.
I recognize Dr. Smith.
Great, thank you for the clarification. I don't have the exact numbers in terms of the readmission rate from West Bedford back into the acute care setting, but we can certainly follow up on that. As Mr. Spinney has said, this has been a learning process, and it's important to us all that we make this this system and this opportunity better every day. So one of the things we've learned is how to identify the best people to go to this facility and the folks who would benefit the best from that. So that's been an ongoing process and will continue to be so. We've tightened that up, and we feel we're at a place where we have patients coming who are excellent candidates, and our numbers speak to that. And again, we hope to continue to optimize that as many other things. One thing also I should mention is that already this isn't just a Halifax facility. This is a systems facility. So we have the ability to inflow patients, appropriate patients, from up to 14 facilities.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. In the interest of time, MLA Lachance has flagged me for another question. MLA Lachance.
I do apologize. I just want to get to one more question building on what you said. So you talked about the fact that there's a feedback back into the system should care needs change. How is there always an acute bed available for someone from West Bedford? We have hospital admission rates at, the overall is 99%. We went through Annapolis Community Health at 140%. So how are those beds available for folks from West Bedford that maybe aren't available for people from the ER or other situations?
I recognize Dr. Smith with about a minute remaining.
Sure. So what's important in all beds is that we have the absolute best patient in that bed and the person who needs to be just there. So patients from West Bedford going to acute care beds are evaluated for that best fit, just like they would be transfers from any other hospital or any other care facility within the NSH umbrella. So patients who need to be in those beds are prioritized, and patients that don't are hopefully sent to a much better care facility such as West Bedford. And
I recognize Ms. Oldfield.
Very quickly, the other thing that, of course, helps us with all of this is the addition of our command center to the entire process, because that helps us to very quickly identify where a bed may be and what time of day that bed is available. So all that data is coming into the decision making.
Thank you, Ms. Oldfield. Ms. Lachance, 10 seconds.
I'll pass it on.
Alrighty, I recognize MLA Mumbercat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a plan to build any more of these across province?
I recognize sorry. Congratulations. I recognize Miss Oldfield.
No, it's got to be Derek. I can't recover from that.
I recognize Mr. Spinney.
Thank you. I'll say the personal answer, if I'm allowed to say personal answers. I hope so. But the official answer, I think, is that is infrastructure planning that government would make decisions on, which gets debated, as you said yourself, in the House at estimates. So point well taken earlier too, where I think where we're coming to on this place is that we've come to understand that the way we procured this was in fact appropriate, although we introduced risks. We've mitigated those risks. We've achieved high value financially and for patients. And we need to consider every spend compared to other spend. So I forget exactly who made that point earlier, but it's a really good one. So we need to, so is this a good thing? Yes, it's a good thing. Where should the next amount of money go on what? That's a really good point and needs to be debated, is I guess the way I would say, and turn it over to the government and the House on that. So I hope so. I think it's a better way of doing it. I think we're continuing to learn, and we're going to learn and grow more in that. But it is something that each of you here today should be considering and then bringing forward, I would say.
I recognize MLA Mombercat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the same tone, I guess. You open a new one. What would you do differently this time, and the next time?
I recognize Mr. Spinney.
It's a great question. One of the things that I think has really opened up everybody's eyes is the possibilities. So originally there was a lot of debate around what type of patient can go here, is it safe, et cetera, et cetera. We've now gone well past that. As Dr. Smith said, there's lots of new cohorts of patients that this is actually very appropriate for, in fact, perhaps more appropriate for. And I think we need a full system approach. And by full system approach, I mean that seniors in long-term care, mental health and addictions, and ourselves should be going into the communities and working from one hub as opposed to different actual facilities. So I think that that's a large part of our learning go forward, and what would we do differently is the expansion of this.
Ms. Oldfield, do you have something to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think just to comment on that, we have recently started to take patients directly from the ER. And by the same token, we're imminently will take patients for West Bedford directly from community. And these are all things that we've been able to glean, learn, and build upon over the course of the last year. And I think being able to place patients directly from community will be a big step forward. But it's again, it will be based on a very unique set of criteria, because the theory is this is not a long-term care home and people are not staying there. This has to be something that continues to move to get people back home and to help us to improve our flow. So I think those are two learnings that we can build upon. And, just from a personal perspective, I would really like to augment the entire experience by making sure that we have the wearable go for whatever period of time is relevant when that individual goes home, so that we can continue to monitor. So that's another whole aspect of the health system that we need to open up.
I recognize MLA Mombercat.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And from a staffing complement, this is my next question. Can you give me a rundown of the staffing complement within Hogan's Court? Is it a full complement? Is there any challenges that you're facing now when it comes to staffing shortages?
I recognize Dr. Smith.
So our clinical staff currently is just over 103, I believe. And as the facility expands, we're going to go up to approximately 239. From a physician perspective, we have 10 to 12 physicians consistently providing support. Every day there's one physician available in person, and there's one also providing virtual support. And on weekends and evenings, we have physicians available 24/7 to support the care team. In terms of NPs, it is envisioned that it will be an NP-led facility with nurse practitioners as the most responsible healthcare provider, practicing at full scope, supporting the interprofessional team, and having the support of MDs when needed. In terms of our NP's current state, I believe it is 3.4, and future state is 7.
I recognize MLA Momberket with 5 minutes remaining.
5 minutes remaining. Okay, thank you. I'll move into. So the space has been open for a year now, and we've had a conversation about the learnings of it and what you would do differently in the future. The budget for the facility has been interesting to break down. We understand that when Shannex takes delivery of the facility, $46 million will be paid to the province, and it's anticipated that transaction will happen sometime in April of this year. Of that portion, $46 million was budgeted for the construction of a second building. Has the construction of the second building exceeded the budgeted amount?
I recognize Mr. Spinney.
Thank you. No. It's the short answer, so no. The original proposal packaged this at $120 million. It's going to end at $114, and that number's been set for some time, and that was part of the consideration that went to government just about this time last year, actually, or 2 years ago, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Spinney. MLA Momberket.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the answer. And again, I'm curious to learn more, really, about like what the future holds when it comes to these facilities. And we've talked a bit about I asked the question around what the future holds for other facilities across the province. We're hopeful that you see more of this, and I guess my next question will be for you, Dr. Smith. Like, I want to, get your overall picture of where the facility is now and what your vision would be moving this across the province.
I recognize Dr. Smith.
Thank you for the question. Where the facility is now is I think it's providing excellent care and the exact right context that people need to heal on this phase of their journey back to community. So I think it's already bringing excellent value. And as I chatted about previously, I think future state is investing in community and investing in digital health. And when I say digital health, sometimes that runs the risk of feeling like we're taking the person out of the center of that care and about data, but actually facilities like this and investments in infrastructure like this, as well as digital infrastructure, actually allow us as clinicians to put the patient and the family more at the center of what we do. It's an enabler as opposed to a barrier to the personal relationship. I think that, future state, we need a much more focused attention on how we support transitional care in that space between acute care facilities and community.
I recognize Ms. Oldfield to add to that.
Thank you for that. Looking around the corner, I see a day where it could be West Bedford, but it could be in another part of the province, but where such a facility actually is the go-to emergency for a certain category of patient, let's say geriatric, so that we're not bringing everybody into the same ER. Now, I'm not, this needs to be stratified. I'm not saying it's everybody, every day, everywhere, but I do see that coming around the corner, and there are examples of that exist today, and they would be in the Scandinavian countries and in particular in Denmark. So, this is something that we have to learn from, and with a facility like West Bedford, we can learn.
I recognize MLA Momberket with 1 minute remaining.
Okay, not enough time for really an answer. I'll finish off by saying thanks to the committee members for being here today. It's one that we're all following very closely, and it's one that, from a healthcare perspective overall, and I just think it's going to be difficult to get these things off the ground when the government's so broke. I think that's where you're going to run into your problems, and it's not a criticism of the Department of Health. I just think it's going to be a very interesting couple of years when it comes to trying to deliver healthcare in this province when you see the finances where they are and the climate that we're living in. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
I recognize MLA Burns.
Thank you, Chair. So CEO Oldfield, we've heard you talk passionately about data today and our wearables technology. I wonder if you could take a moment to explain where you see the technology going in terms of the wearables, the command center. We spoke about value for money today. We're challenging how much we've spent versus what value and return we're getting for that. But you led into how critical it was to be able to follow the patient's journey, to track 69,000 data points, to follow the patient home. Where would you see us being if we didn't have these technologies, and if they weren't available? What situation would that have created if we hadn't have invested into value for money in this situation?
I recognize Ms. Oldfield.
Thank you. Before the More Faster plan was announced, so I think that was December 22, very difficult to do anything in the system because we were just blocked getting in, blocked getting out. And it's not an answer to say, okay, well, we're going to build 1,000 more beds, because that could be, and is going to take X years. This is what in Nova Scotia, but in other provinces as well, has led to what is described as hallway medicine or non-traditional beds. And with costs associated with those non-traditional beds, staffing costs and so forth, and it is less than optimum. So what we've been able to do, and I'll just give the two examples, I'll give three quick examples. With West Bedford, as described, so many bed days have been saved from the acute care system. And I would add to that there's another 29,000 bed days that have been returned to the system, if you like, by virtue of the command center. So, Derek used the direct cost of $985. I usually use $1,500 a day in the acute care system, all in. And 29,000 bed days returned to the system is massive. It is a massive return that enables people to flow through our acute care system. And without that, I don't even know, I wouldn't even predict where we would be. I did hear on the radio this week on Monday, I'm sure folks heard it, an ER physician from St. John's, Newfoundland, being asked to comment on urgent treatment centers that were being put in place in Newfoundland, and he was very happy to hear about that, but said it wasn't going to do a darn thing for the hospital, which was clogged. Not enough beds. That's not one thing. That's many, many, many things. But I guess at the end of the day, what enables you to unclog is not all infrastructure, but it is data, because we can manage. We know what person is ready to go home at 11 o'clock discharge because we can see it on C3. We know who's ready to be repatriated back to one of the other zones in the province because we can see it. We can make sure that the transfer unit is there on time to free up that bed. All of this is visible. And before we had this kind of data, we just were flying. It was phone calls, it was handwritten notes, it was people spending hours and hours and hours saying, do you have a bed? Do you have a bed? Do you have a bed? So when you can see the beds, it makes a great deal of difference. So I think that's been a massive help to the system, and wearables and all of the other things that I talk about are only going to help that. I just would also finish by my third example, which is Your Health NS, and that is a success story. Over 1 million downloads, and setting out a variety of pathways to care. So it's not always going to the outdoor, which is what they call the ER at the Aberdeen, if I'm not mistaken. But, there are pathways to care that are very clearly laid out. And as this tool becomes even better and better, and I would just invite all of you to make sure that not only that you have it downloaded, but you can now get your patient summary that you can share with your provider with ER, with whoever you want to, via a QR code. I mean, that's amazing. And we are the only province that can do that. So I think the tools that we have put us, and this in a way goes back to MLA Mumberket's point, we are at a point where we can take all of this investment and start to leverage it, number one, for our patients and families, but number two, to make sure that we're using the data appropriately so that our automatic response is not, oh, well, we need to build another bed. But we can use it to make sure that the patient gets the proper care in the right place.
Thank you, Ms. Oldfield. I recognize MLA Burns.
Amazing. Thank you. It really sounds like we may have been operating blind prior to getting to the situation we are today. It actually sounds like you're describing cost investments which are turning into cost savings, both from the time and effort that goes into a better overall 30,000-foot view visual of what the system looks like, where the beds are and what's in use, as well as when Mr. Spinney described the value for money and the cost of the property and unheard of cost of square footage for acquiring these facilities. It really sounds like perhaps an investment we couldn't have afforded not to make. I understand the facility right now is not fully open and fully operational as well, so we're looking to add additional capacity. We've been hearing all day about the benefits and the success stories of this. As we question value for money. What we're hearing is savings for money. I guess I would ask, when we open the remaining beds and room space at the facility, what extra impact on capacity, on staff, on savings, on value for money are we going to continue to see as we expand that facility and look at opportunities in the future?
I recognize Mr. Spinney with 3.5 minutes.
Thank you for the question. The remaining beds to open are 110. So April 1st was when we were scheduled to have that to be complete and ready. As I mentioned, I was there yesterday walking through the facility to see the state that we're in, and we're well on track. And so starting April 1st, those beds will begin to open. They will be staggered just because of safety of patients and transport and the logistics of actually making that happen. But the facility is ready and the staffing complement is ready too. So some of the new things that we're seeing there, for instance, are 4 bariatric units or spaces, which again, the dignity that this provides to patients in an appropriate setting is extreme, I would say. There are 18 units or rooms that are better equipped to deal with anyone that's having behavioral issues, so that they're in a safe place for them and for those that are attending to them. There's also, as I was mentioning earlier, quiet spaces for patients and families to go to and destinations that they'll be able to go to. And so part of the increased value is not only just the straight numbers that I've been giving, but it's the new things that we're learning to be able to do. So what else can we do here, and what does that mean? Ms. Oldfield mentioned earlier, for instance, that we now have the ability, we've started to do this, that when somebody shows up at the emergency department at the Halifax Infirmary, one of the potential pathways for them is actually West Bedford. So if they're going to come in to go upstairs to simply then get transferred, that doesn't make any sense. So can we identify earlier to say, don't wait here for 18 hours, let's get transport for you so that you can go to West Bedford now. So we're now figuring out how to actually do that. And a really important part that I was reminded about yesterday too is the extreme volume that will be going through this place. So just to put it into context, Dartmouth General has, I think, just under 200 beds. And this is 178 beds, and it will actually have more traffic, ins and outs, if I can call it that way, than the Dartmouth General Hospital, because the length of stay will be less at this facility because the acuity is lower. So the amount of coming and going at the facility is extreme. And so one of the things that we were actually talking through yesterday is the flow of ambulances. There were two, well, I was there yesterday, for instance, with people coming and going. And so making sure that the facility can deal with that flow in a really great way. So it is going to be an extremely busy place that we can deliver good care.
Thank you, Mr. Spinney. I recognize Emily Burns with half a minute remaining.
Thank you, and I appreciate the run through. I guess I'll just wrap it up here with it's been great to hear about the progress we're making, the value for money that we're receiving. It's amazing the way the returns on this facility compare to what we see traditionally, what has or hasn't been done in the past. And it sounds like there's real value in investing in innovation in this province and coming out as a leader as we have other provinces come here, as you said, to see what we're doing and what we're doing to bring Nova Scotia into the digital age in the future.
Thank you, Emily Burns. I'll ask the witnesses if they have any closing remarks. I recognize Deputy MacKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the committee for your questions today and the conversation. We've had a lot of chat today about access and flow and some data about EDs over the past 2 years, increasing wait times by 50%. So I just wanted to, on the record in my closing remarks, talk about some of the improvements in access and flow for EDs in particular. And just to note for the record that West Bedford opened in December 24, so not 2 years ago, but really just over a year ago. With respect to ED wait times from 2023 to 2025, ED wait times are down 7 hours. The other piece is that with respect to time to transfer from the ED to inpatient beds for admitted patients, even with an additional 2,500 admitted patients province-wide, time to transfer was reduced by almost 1,200 patient days. In Central Zone alone, that was the equivalent of freeing up 6 beds a day to improve access and flow. With respect to offload time, there are also improvements with respect to offloads. Even with an additional 10,000 offloads for EDs in 2025, offload time was reduced by 137 days overall compared to 2024. And we've returned 21,000 hours to the EHS system for community reports. Those are my comments. Thank you for your time. We're seeing improvements, and we're very excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy MacKenzie. Anyone else? CEO Oldfield.
Oldfield, thank you. Yes, I'd like to just comment on numbers as well, because I look at our surgeries. Our surgical wait list is the lowest it's ever been, and we are doing 121% more surgeries than we did pre-COVID. That's despite all. And similarly, and I don't have the number, and I apologize, but our diagnostic imaging they're doing quite a bit more work with the same number of people and the same everything, and the percentage of what's going through our labs is very, very high. So I think when we throw numbers around, we need to be really, really clear on what are the numbers. And so one of the sources that, of course, is nationally known is CIHI. And on CIHI, Nova Scotia is in the top 3 for hips, knees, and top for cataracts. And so I think that, that shows the people in the healthcare system, the healthcare staff, workers, docs, and everybody have really put shoulder to the wheel. And I would simply say, through you, Mr. Chair, and the committee, thank you.
Thank you, folks, for making yourselves available today. I really appreciate it. You are now free to leave, and we will continue on with some committee business. Do we want a slight recess? 2 minutes? 2-minute recess. Order, please. All right, so the first item today on committee business, the committee has a practice of endorsing Auditor General recommendations. So I'd ask for a motion to endorse the recommendations relating to the Cybersecurity Readiness in Healthcare report. I recognize MLA Outfit.
Oh, sorry. No, I think MLA Timmins.
Okay, I recognize MLA Timmins.
I move that the public accounts formally accept the endorsement recommendations contained in the 2024 report of the Auditor General, Cybersecurity Readiness in Healthcare, and that have been accepted by the audited departments or agencies, and ask that those departments and agencies commit to and take responsibility for full and timely implementation of the recommendations accepted by those departments and agencies.
Thank you, MLA Timmins. Anything else on that? All those in favor? Those opposed? All right, it is moved. Next item, we have some correspondence. You'll see this as part of your package. Department of Growth and Development information requested from the November 12th meeting. Any discussion on this item? Okay, we have another piece of correspondence from the same department, Growth and Development, and it's information requested from the December 3rd meeting. Any discussion on this information that we received? Okay, moving right along here. The subcommittee met on January 7th to review the witnesses suggested by the Auditor General for the financial report. The record of decision from that meeting has been provided to the members as part of your package here. I'd ask for a motion to approve the record of decision. I recognize MLA Mumbercat.
Motion to approve the witnesses.
All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, carried. Okay, December 3rd motion. The following motion was left on the floor at the December 3rd meeting. That the Public Accounts Committee write a letter for the Department of Growth and Development affirming the position that no persons earning more than $100,000 per year should be placed in public housing. It was moved by Tom Taggart, and I'd now like to open the floor for discussion. MLA Lachance.
Thank you. I mean, I think, this is in the realm of policy. So government has the power to change the threshold and rules about who is eligible for public housing at any time that they want. And it's not necessary for a non-binding motion at this committee to make that happen.
Any further discussion? MLA Wozni.
I'd like to ask a question for clarification purposes. The motion reads that the Public Accounts Committee write a letter for the Department of Growth and Development affirming the position that no persons earning more than $100,000 per year should be placed in public housing. Does the committee have the standing to write a letter on behalf of the Department of Growth and Development?
I think to clarify there, MLA Wozni, the letter would be written on behalf of this committee and sent to the Department of Growth and Development. MLA Mombercat.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And this has been a bit of a conversation in the last committee. Obviously based on the Facebook sharing from my Cape Breton colleagues and everybody else about how I responded the last time. It was the strategy of the government, and that's fine. I would say, in my 15 years of politics, I've never dealt with a case of someone who made over, a certain amount of money. The regional housing and the housing departments across the province do an excellent job. They evaluate applications for folks to meet the criteria. And that's been the relationship that I've had with them for 15 years. So if the government has an example of this, because obviously what's going to happen is there'll be a vote today. There'll be some sort of messaging coming from the government about, what was said at committee, because that was the strategy the last time. But I'm on the record saying I've never dealt with a case with this. I just don't understand what the rationale is for this, unless there's something that they want to put on the floor today to indicate why they even want this in the first place.
Thank you, Emily Mombercat. Any more discussion regarding this matter? Emily Outhet.
Not just one. Do we need to amend the motion just to say 2 instead of 4? I think that was a good catch. I'm happy to move that.
Certainly, if we want to clarify that.
I'm happy to move that the motion be amended to change that a letter will be to the department rather than for the department. Thank you.
Okay, so we will vote on that amendment. All those in favor? Those against? Okay, now we'll vote on that motion as amended. All those in favor? Those against? Thank you. Okay, our final... Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hebb. The motion is passed. On to our next business. Turner Drake and Partners Limited. They are a witness. So the topic, review of our homes, action for housing 5-year plan, has been scheduled for February 25th. The witnesses are the Department of Growth and Development, AHANS, and Turner Drake and Partners Limited. So Neil Levitt, Vice President, Planning and Economic Intelligence with Turner Drake, has indicated he will be the likely witness. However, he wanted to share that he is a member of the Affordable Housing Association's Board of Directors and has been since 2020. So I think this was kind of an FYI for us. Is there any discussion on this new information? Okay, we'll accept the information and continue on. Next meeting will be January 28th, 2026. Department of Municipal Affairs, Department of Growth and Development, Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, and Nova Scotia Nonprofit Housing Association, and it'll be regarding the provincial municipal relations and support or housing development. Is there any further business? All right, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.